The 1440 PC is insanely vast in 2025, and the list to choose from is bigger than ever. The good news is that it's actually easier now to find great budget options, like the MSIG 274 QPF-QD, which packs a ton of features you don't usually see at this price. Aside from the usual 170Hz 1440p combo, it also brings a very ergonomic stand, a USB-C port, and even DisplayPort 2.1 with alt mode support. Its out-of-the-box color accuracy is another highlight. It barely needs any calibration unless you're doing color grading or something more professional. For under $200, this is a fantastic monitor, and easily the best in its price range. The Dell G2724D was fighting for this spot too, but it's extremely hard to find in most regions. If you do come across it, go for it. It's the better monitor overall, with nicer black uniformity and a cleaner design. Just remember, it doesn't have USB-C. The MSI is also decent for consoles since it supports VRR, but it's not perfect. Fortunately, you can just jump to something like the Asus XG27ACS and solve pretty much all of that in one shot, if you're willing to spend about $80 more. This Asus model is better than the MSI in pretty much everything. Brightness, HDR color accuracy, contrast, which also makes it great for editors. Just don't expect deep blacks because both are IPS panels. For more contrast, the best you're going to get at this price point is a solid VA option like the Dell S3222 DGM, which also takes the crown for the best 1440p 32-inch pick. The S3222 DGM comes with a 32-inch VA panel, a 165Hz refresh rate, and a surprisingly fast response time. It offers great contrast, black uniformity, color accuracy, and brightness. The only real downside is its 1800R curvature. I'm personally not a huge fan of that, but if you can look past it, you're getting one of the highest price-to-performance monitors in the 32-inch 1440p category. Of course, it still has the usual VA problems like black smearing, so don't expect it to be amazing for competitive play. To be fair, most competitive players stick with 1080p anyway, so let's talk a bit about those. Here, the C is even wider. With the rise of 1440p, 1080p monitors have become cheaper than ever, and it's not hard to find great picks like the MSI 255 FE20 or the MSI 255 XFV. The 255 FE20 is a 1080p 200Hz monitor, a pretty nice refresh rate for its price, but because it's an IPS panel, you'll definitely notice uneven blacks during dark scenes in a dim room. The MSI 255 XFV, on the other hand, uses a VA panel with a 240Hz refresh rate. It's usually about $20 more expensive, so it really comes down to preference. If you want IPS, go with the 255 FE20, and if you prefer VA, the 255XFV will suit you just fine. But if you're still unsure about which panel type is best for you, check out this video. It'll clear that up. Because it's a VA panel, the 255XFV has deeper, more contrasty blacks, but also worse viewing angles and black smearing. That last one is the real issue for competitive gaming, so the 40Hz advantage doesn't actually matter much in practice. If you want something with decent speed for competitive titles, definitely go with the 255 FE20. But if you're after cinematic deep blacks and a smooth 240Hz experience for single-player games, get the 255XFV. Fortunately, if you do want to get deeper into the competitive scene, there is a great budget pick, not as cheap as the previous ones, but still solid, the ViewSonic XG2431. This monitor is absolutely awesome for competitive gaming. It has a 240Hz refresh rate and a super fast response time. You won't see any blur during fast-moving scenes, and you won't see flicker either, thanks to its Pure XP motion blur reduction feature, which works as a backlight strobe. And to top it off, it's Blurbusters approved 2.0, so you really don't need to worry about the performance on this one. This monitor is great for esports titles, but pretty mediocre for everything else. Its IPS panel has a lot of glowing, the contrast is awful, and while the colors are well calibrated to be fair, I still recommend sticking with the cheaper options I mentioned earlier if you mainly play story games. And speaking of story games, the higher the resolution, the better the experience. So let's move on to the budget 4K choices. The Dell S2725QS has been dropping massively in price this year, and right now it's one of the cheapest 4K monitors you can get. Of course, that alone doesn't make it the best budget 4K monitor, but there are a few things that really secure its spot here. First, it has great color accuracy out of the box, which already makes it a solid pick for editing. Sure, it can improve a bit with calibration, but not by much. Second, it has a 120 Hz refresh rate with full HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, so you do get a decent level of smoothness during gameplay. However, it does show a bit of motion blur during fast-paced scenes, so depending on what you play, it might not be the most suitable choice. Still, for this price, the 4K sharpness and rich colors more than make up for it in my opinion. And if you have a little more to spend on a 4K monitor, I strongly recommend going for the M27UP instead, especially if you're more into gaming. It has more ports, way more gaming features, less motion blur, and the same color performance as the S2725QS. It also supports dual mode, letting you play at either 360 Hz or 4K 160 Hz, which is honestly an awesome flexibility to have. And since it's 27 inches, both resolutions look great, not too blurry at 1080p and not too small at 4K. But if 27 inches isn't enough for you, you can step up to the LG 32GR93UB. And yeah, the price gap is a bit big, but believe it or not, there really aren't many cheaper options when it comes to a good 32-inch 4K monitor like this one. This one has excellent color accuracy, actually better than the Dell S2725QS, and definitely better than the M27UP. Gaming-wise, it also has a slightly faster response time than the M27UP, though depending on the games you play, you probably won't notice much of a difference. It's also a great choice for console players since it has full VRR support across all refresh rates and resolutions through HDMI 2.1. Overall, an awesome screen for the price. So those are your budget picks for the year. Now let's step things up a bit and talk about the best mid-end and high-end models. In the sub-$300 range, the LG 27GR83Q is easily one of the best. It's a 240Hz 1440p monitor with a bunch of gaming features and a well-calibrated IPS panel that performs noticeably better than the cheaper options. It's also the best 1440p monitor on this list for console gaming so far, thanks to its HDMI 2.1, which fully takes advantage of modern consoles. On the other hand, while its colors are great from the get-go, they can benefit from some further calibration, since the blacks and whites are a bit unbalanced. Still, for this price, there's nothing much better than this one. You'll often see it for below $300 during deals, and that's the price I recommend for it. Above $300, it's not worth it. Around $400 to $450, the best one is the Cooler Master Tempest GP27U. It's a 4K 27-inch mini LED monitor with an insane amount of brightness, and of course, all the benefits of a mini LED backlight. The blacks are deep, the contrast is high, and this model also has a wide range of colors, so HDR is awesome on this one. It's also got HDMI 2.1 and is great for consoles, with G-Sync and FreeSync support, along with VRR. It has a lot of ports too, 2 USB-A ports and 1 USB-C, as well as a KVM switch, so you can use your peripherals like your mouse and keyboard directly on the monitor. It has very little motion blur and a quick response time, so this is definitely one of the best monitors on this list, and without a doubt, one I'd personally go for if it was in my budget. If you want a super fast monitor for competitive gaming, and price is not an issue, grab the BenQ Zowie XL2586X. It's one of the fastest monitors out there with 540 Hz and an awesome response time with basically no motion blur at all. However, it has one of the worst picture qualities out of all the monitors on this list so far. I like to say this is the perfect monitor if you want speed, and just that, nothing more. Now, let's talk about the best OLED monitors of the year. Believe it or not, the AOC AG276QZD2 still reigns supreme when it comes to budget OLED monitors in 2025. There are a couple of new competitors on the rise, but none of them reach this one's price when it's on a good sale. I always talk about this monitor on my channel, but for those who don't know, this is one of the most affordable OLEDs and one of the best monitors you can get in terms of price to performance. It's a QD OLED 27-inch monitor with a 1440p resolution, a 240 Hz refresh rate, and an insane price for everything it offers. The only downside is that while it has awesome colors for SDR content, the HDR gamut is a bit limited, so it isn't ideal if you want a great HDR screen, but we'll get into HDR choices in a minute. If you want something better than this one, I I strongly suggest waiting for the new 4th Gen OLED monitors to fully roll out at the end of the year and grabbing one of those. The new 4th Gen OLED is a big improvement over QD OLEDs, with the main differences being better performance in bright rooms and generally higher brightness. They'll come out at around $500 to $600, so if you can wait for the Gigabyte M27 Q28G or the Asus ROG Strix XG27A QWMG, do it. Another great choice is the Asus XG32 UCWG. It has a WOLED glossy panel, so you won't get the purple blacks when viewing the screen in a bright room. Also, it has a dual mode feature, allowing you to switch between 330Hz and 4K 165Hz. It also has the Neo proximity sensor, which is a nice little addition to reduce the risk of burn-in. It basically detects when you're in front of the screen and blacks out the panel when you're not to refresh the pixels. As for 27-inch 4Ks, it's now very hard to find a 4K OLED 27-inch option that's worth it, with most of them being over $900, which just doesn't make sense at the moment. But out of all of them, the Dell Alienware AW2725Q is one of the best and easiest to find so far. Anyway, having said that, let's get into HDR. HDR in 2025 is as accessible as ever, though there are some things to keep in mind when buying HDR or OLED monitors, since there are a lot of fake HDR screens out there. But don't worry, I only selected models with real HDR hardware, so that won't be a problem here. First, for budget options, the AOC Q27G3XMN is still an awesome choice with its mini LED VA panel, great backlight dimming, and high brightness. The AOC Q27G40XMN is the upgraded version released this year, but it's now super hard to find in some regions. It has more dimming zones and noticeably less blooming thanks to its improved local dimming, but both use the same VA panel. If you prefer going the IPS route, the Xiaomi G Pro 27i is another great pick, with better viewing angles and great colors. Although, once again, it's another one that's hard to find in a lot of regions. From here on, OLEDs start becoming the best options for HDR content. Models like the Alienware AW2725DF, with its 360Hz refresh rate and true black HDR, are amazing picks above the $400 range. It's a 1440p 27-inch panel, and one of the only 360Hz options under $600. But if you play in a bright room during the day, it's better to wait for the new 4th Gen OLEDs I mentioned earlier. So keep the Asus XG27AQWMG on your radar. As for 4K, the story is similar. The XG32 UCWG is the king here, although the price is definitely on the salty side. But if you can afford it, it's a fantastic monitor. If you're into ultrawides, 2025 hasn't changed pricing too much for this category, but some options like the Dell Alienware AW3423DWF have dropped a bit recently. It's a 34-inch QD OLED ultrawide with a 165Hz refresh rate, 1800R curvature, and a 1440p resolution. The AW3425DW is the upgraded version of this one and is better for consoles thanks to its HDMI 2.1 support, while the older model is still stuck with HDMI 2.0. It also bumps the refresh rate up to 240Hz instead of 165Hz. But honestly, I don't think the price difference is worth it, and I'd still go for the AW3423DWF if it fit my budget. On the opposite end of that, if price isn't a problem, grab the LG 45GX950A-B. It's the most expensive monitor on the entire list, but also possibly the best one. It's big, slim, has a 5120 by 2160 resolution, and a great PPI, which pushes immersion to another level. It also uses a WOLED panel with excellent color accuracy right out of the box. On top of that, it includes a bunch of features like a KVM switch, HDMI and DisplayPort 2.1, a USB hub, and of course the dual mode feature, letting you switch between 5K 165Hz and 2560 by 1830 at 330Hz. It's got an 800R curvature too, which is absolutely perfect for its size. And if you're wondering, you can get all of that for a whopping $1,500, so prepare your pockets. Anyway, if you want to stop falling into the monitor lies of today's industry, click here. And here for the headphones guide. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.